Welcome to HardScript.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I came home one Tuesday evening to find my wife sitting on the couch with her arms crossed, like she'd been rehearsing a breakup with the walls. No warning, no build-up, just a quiet sentence that detonated everything I thought was steady. She said she needed space, that it wasn't the end, that we both just needed room to breathe. I stood there by the doorway, still holding my tool belt from a long day on a remodeling job, and listened to her speak like she was reading from a script she didn't believe in. The house smelled like reheated Chick-fil-A, the kind she picked up when she didn't want to sit across from me at dinner and actually talk. She didn't look guilty, not even conflicted. She looked free, like she'd already stepped into a different version of her life, and I hadn't noticed the door closing behind her. My name is Mark Wallace, 41 years old, and I've spent most of my adult life fixing what other people break. Walls, roofs, wiring, decks. If it cracked, sagged, leaked, or rotted, I rebuilt it. Simple work. Honest work. But the one thing I never managed to fix was the silence growing between my wife and me every morning she left with a Starbucks cup in her hand and didn't bother kissing me goodbye. Emma was a personal trainer at a local gym, the kind of place where loud music covers the fact that everyone's flirting with someone else's future regret. She thrived on attention, touch, the constant hum of bodies moving. I was the opposite, methodical, steady, built for the slow kind of living most people overlook. The first hit wasn't her asking for space. It was the way she said it, like I was an obstruction instead of a husband. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't ask who he was. I just nodded once and set my tool belt down on the floor. I opened the hall closet, pulled out my old notebook, and wrote 3 words on the first blank page. Listen, observe, respond. I'd used those same 3 steps on every job site since I was 19. They kept mistakes small and outcomes predictable. I didn't press her for details. I didn't try to save anything. I just made dinner for myself, watched her pretend to scroll Craigslist for used furniture, and waited. 2 nights later, I realized it wasn't furniture. It was him. The trainer she worked her morning shifts with. Younger, louder, always around her, always touching her in ways she said were just part of the job. That night, she fell asleep on her side of the bed, phone face down, breathing easy. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling I'd patched myself 2 summers ago, and made a decision. I wasn't going to beg her to remember what we had. I wasn't going to compete with a man who lived inside a gym mirror. I was going to do what I've always done, stay quiet, stay steady, and let the truth expose itself without me lifting more than a finger. She wanted space. Fine. I'd use that space to observe her patterns, track her shifts, and watch the small tells she thought I was too simple to notice. And when the time came, I'd respond in the calmest way possible. Not with rage, not with threats, but with distance so absolute it would feel like a door she could never reopen. The morning after she asked for space, I left the house before sunrise and sat in my Toyota Camry in the quiet Home Depot parking lot. It was the only place that felt steady enough for my thoughts. I watched the sky lighten over the loading bay and let the silence settle into me. I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't chasing her either. I was gathering myself the same way I did before opening a wall, knowing something rotten might be behind it. Calm. Exact. Ready. Emma left for work later than usual that day. I saw it on the home cameras I'd installed 2 years back when we remodeled the living room. She moved through the house without the slightest tension, like she'd slept soundly after telling me she wanted distance from the man who'd built her entire life with his bare hands. She grabbed her gym bag, her water bottle, and that same oversized Starbucks cup she used as a shield whenever she didn't want to talk. She didn't even glance toward the security camera by the entryway. She never noticed the small things. I started keeping track of her schedule without making it obvious. Not spying, not snooping, just paying attention. The same way I'd track shifting humidity in a framing job or the subtle sag of a load-bearing beam. Patterns mattered. And Emma's patterns had changed. She used to come home after her last session around 6. Now it was 7:30, sometimes 8. She would say traffic, say new clients, say a late class. I didn't confront her. I didn't even change my tone. I just listened. 3 days after our Chick-fil-A conversation, the one where she said she didn't want this to be the end, her routine broke completely. She came home glowing with a kind of energy she hadn't had with me in a long time. She said the gym was busy, that she was exhausted, that she just wanted to shower and get in bed early. I nodded. Inside, something colder tightened in my chest. Not pain, not jealousy, recognition. The kind that hits you when you realize the problem you've been trying to fix isn't a loose board or a cracked pipe. It's the whole foundation. That same night, she fell asleep with her phone unlocked beside her. Not careless. Comfortable. Too comfortable. A notification lit the screen, and I didn't have to touch it to see the preview. Just a name. Nate. The younger trainer she always mentioned casually, like he was barely part of her day. The message was short but revealing. He'd written that he missed last night, and that he couldn't stop thinking about her laughing in the staff room. I didn't react. Didn't shake her awake. Didn't scroll. I just watched the screen go dark again. Then I turned my attention back to the quiet house, the one I had built around us, and felt a shift inside myself. She wasn't just slipping away. She was already gone. And now it was my turn to create space. Not the kind she asked for. The kind she would never bridge again. I didn't change my behavior the next morning. That was important. People who panic expose themselves. People who stay quiet learn everything they need. So I made coffee, left for work at my usual time, and let Emma believe nothing in our house had shifted except her mood. I drove the car slowly through our neighborhood, windows down, letting the cool air clear out the remnants of whatever illusion I'd been living under. She said she needed space. She said we were just recalibrating. But the truth had already settled like dust on a workbench. She wasn't drifting. She was choosing someone else. At the job site, I spent most of the morning inside a half-gutted kitchen, pulling old cabinets off the wall and inspecting the framing. Real work has a rhythm I can follow even on days when my mind feels like a construction zone of its own. Measure, inspect, remove, replace. But every now and then, I'd stop mid-swing, remembering the preview of that message. The way her name lit up beside his. The casual ownership in the tone he used. It wasn't new. It was familiar, practiced, comfortable. That bothered me more than anything else. During lunch, I drove to Home Depot again, not because I needed supplies, but because the quiet aisles steadied me. I used to see the place as a second shop, somewhere I could walk, think, and reset. That day, I walked past the lumber racks and let the truth take shape like a blueprint in my head. Emma's affair wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was built on convenience. Daily proximity. Shared sweat. Shared jokes. Shared secrets. I'd watched that dynamic before with clients. Marriages buckling under the weight of tiny, ignored cracks. A trainer spending long hours with someone who offered constant validation while the husband worked long, quiet jobs. It wasn't new. I just never expected it to be mine. When I got home that evening, Emma was already on the couch, pretending to watch Netflix like it was still our thing. We used to sit together every night, her legs over my lap, some show playing in the background. Now she sat at the far end, arms folded, eyes flicking between the screen and her phone. She said she was tired. She said they had a busy day at the gym. She said she might go for a walk later to clear her head. I just nodded. I didn't check her phone or press her for details. I didn't ask where she planned to walk or who she planned to see. I simply grabbed the notebook from the hallway drawer and wrote down the time she left the house. Then I wrote down the time she came back. Patterns don't lie. People do. And her pattern was starting to speak louder than anything she'd said to me in months. The next shift in her routine came quietly, the way most structural failures do. You don't hear the snap, you feel the weight settling in places it shouldn't. Emma started showering the minute she got home, something she'd never done in all our years together. She used to unwind first, sit with me, let the day come off her slowly. Now she rushed upstairs like she'd stepped in something she needed to wash off before I noticed. She said the gym was extra sweaty. She said the air conditioning broke. She said the new class schedule was brutal. Her words were polished, but her eyes never met mine. That told the real story. I didn't follow her. I didn't ask who she'd been with before she walked through the door. Instead, I moved through the kitchen, putting away the groceries I'd bought earlier at Home Depot's small section of household basics. The quiet gave me time to think. If she wanted space, I'd give it to her in the purest form. Distance without drama. Silence without resentment. The kind that reveals a person's true intentions because there's no friction to hide behind. When she finally came downstairs, she acted surprised to see me still awake. She said she thought I'd be in bed. She said she needed time alone. I nodded, letting her believe I was adjusting to the new dynamic she wanted. She didn't realize that I was already stepping away, just not in the direction she expected. Later that night, she sat on the couch and opened Netflix, pretending this was still our ritual. She put on a show we used to watch together, one she knew I liked, probably hoping it would make everything feel normal for a moment. It didn't. She scrolled her phone more than she watched. Her screen kept lighting up with messages. She tilted away from me, unaware that the reflection in the window behind her showed everything she thought she was hiding. I didn't confront her. I didn't reach for her phone or question the sudden burst of notifications from someone saved under a name I didn't recognize. I just made a note of the time and the frequency, the way she smiled at her screen but kept her face blank whenever she looked my way. Around 11, she said she needed fresh air and stepped outside. I watched through the blinds as she stood in the driveway, not moving, not pacing, just waiting. A car slowed near the end of the street. She didn't wave, didn't signal, just watched it pass before heading back inside with a sigh that wasn't about me. That was when something inside me settled, the same calm that hits right before I tear out a damaged beam. A quiet certainty that the structure is already gone. Now I just have to decide how cleanly to remove myself from the wreckage. The night she stood in the driveway waiting for a car that didn't stop, something in me shifted for good. Not broken, not wounded, just realigned. The way a seasoned carpenter adjusts a level when he finally sees the slope in a floor he's been walking across for years. I went to bed early that night, not because I was tired, but because I wanted her to walk into a quiet room and feel the absence of the man she'd been taking for granted. She slipped under the covers carefully, like she didn't want to disturb me, though we both knew she'd been disturbing the foundation of our marriage for months. In the morning, I made coffee and left before she came downstairs, letting the house stay silent around her. She texted mid-morning, short, clipped, polite. She said she hoped I was doing all right. She said she didn't want things to feel cold. I didn't respond. Not to punish her. Not to provoke her. Just to let space finally mean what she claimed she wanted. By noon, she'd sent a second message, saying she'd be home late again. Busy day at the gym. Extra clients. I didn't acknowledge that one either. Driving the car back from a job that afternoon, I noticed how freeing the quiet was. No tension pressing against my ribs. No waiting for her next excuse. No wondering if her smile meant she was happy with me or thinking about him. I realized I hadn't felt that kind of clarity in a long time. It wasn't peace exactly. More like neutrality, a flat plane with no more fractures to examine. When I got home, Emma wasn't there. Her gym bag was gone. Her favorite shoes were missing from the mat near the door. But her laptop was on the counter, screen still glowing. She never left it open. The screen showed a Craigslist tab, something she'd said she used for furniture ideas. But behind that tab was the message thread she forgot to close. Her reflection on the screen flickered as I read the preview of the most recent message. He'd written that he'd be waiting behind the gym after her shift, that he wanted to talk about the future. The kind of word you don't use with someone's wife unless lines have already been crossed and erased. I closed the laptop without touching anything else. No anger, no confrontation, no pacing, just quiet acknowledgement of what was already obvious. She wasn't choosing between him and me. She'd already chosen. And now, so had I. That evening, I didn't wait for her. I didn't ask where she'd been or why she didn't come home until nearly 10. I simply watched her walk past me with her shoulders tight and her eyes avoiding mine. She seemed nervous now, unsure, thrown off by the stillness she'd once mistaken for passivity. She wanted space. I was finally giving it to her. The kind she couldn't come back from. 2 days later, the air between us had settled into something brittle, like drywall that looks fine until you press your thumb against it. Emma moved around the house carefully now, whisper-quiet footsteps, measured breaths, eyes tracking me the way people track a storm on the edge of the horizon. I wasn't angry. I wasn't cold. I was just unavailable. And she felt it. She didn't know what to do with a version of me she couldn't predict or cajole. For years she'd relied on my steadiness. Now that same steadiness made me unreadable to her. I left early that Friday, heading out before she even came downstairs. Work was slow, but I stayed busy, taking on small repair jobs for old clients and keeping myself out of the house until after sunset. The more distance I gave her, the more she seemed to shrink into herself. She started texting more often, sending harmless questions about dinner, schedules, the weekend. I answered none of them. Not out of spite, out of clarity. When a structure is compromised, you don't reinforce it by leaning on the damaged side. You step back and let the cracks show. That evening, when I walked into the house, she was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open. The same screen I'd seen earlier in the week. Craigslist again, this time not even pretending to look at furniture. An open message thread sat in plain view, and she closed it too fast when I walked in. Her breathing hitched. Her hands shook. She wasn't hiding well anymore. Panic always exposes the truth faster than guilt does. She tried to act casual, asking if I wanted takeout, asking if we could maybe watch something together, mentioning Netflix like the word itself could stitch our evenings back together. I didn't sit down. I didn't answer her questions. I just walked to the sink, washed my hands, and went upstairs. It wasn't punishment. It was simply the path I'd chosen, strategic distance. Visible, but unreachable. Later that night, I heard her on the phone. Voice low, edges cracking. She said she didn't know what I was thinking. She said she didn't understand why I'd pulled away. She said she needed reassurance. Her tone wasn't the confident, glowing version of herself she gave the world. It was small, desperate, the version she'd never wanted me to hear. I sat in the dark at the top of the stairs and listened to her breathe through the silence on the other end. She wasn't talking to him. That much was obvious. He never asked about her feelings. He only asked for her time. When she finally hung up, I waited until the house went still. Then I went into the hallway and opened my notebook again. And for the first time since this began, I added a new word under the others. Detach. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving anything. It was the cleanest way to step out of a collapsing structure before it buried me with it. By the following week, Emma's uncertainty had turned into full-blown restlessness. She moved through the house like she was afraid to touch anything, afraid it might crumble beneath her fingers the way her excuses had. I kept my distance, staying polite, calm, but unreachable. That kind of quiet unnerves people more than shouting ever could. She'd expected tension, arguments, jealousy. Instead, she got a man who no longer needed answers. On Wednesday, she woke earlier than usual. I heard her in the kitchen making breakfast, something she hadn't done in months. The smell drifted upstairs, but I stayed in the bedroom and kept getting ready for work. When I finally walked downstairs, she looked surprised, almost hopeful. She said she'd made extra. I told her I had to head out early. No anger in my voice. Just fact. That seemed to throw her off more than anything I'd done so far. I spent most of the day on a deck repair for an older couple I'd worked with before. It felt good to measure clean lines, drive uniform screws, and build something that would actually last. Stability makes sense to me. People less so. Around noon, my phone buzzed with 3 texts from Emma in a row, updates, check-ins, questions about dinner. I put the phone back in my pocket and kept working. Later in the afternoon, I sat in the car outside the gym where she worked. Not because I wanted to watch her, because I needed to confirm something I already suspected. Her shift ended at 3. She didn't walk out until 4:30. When she did, she wasn't alone. The younger trainer, Nate, walked beside her, moving closer than coworkers do. They talked like people sharing a secret life, not lovers caught in guilt. People comfortable in the gray zone they'd created. I didn't step out. I didn't confront him. I just noted the time, the way their shoulders brushed, the way she laughed at something he said. A different laugh than the one she used at home. Brighter. Looser. It was the laugh she used when she thought she owed the world her best version, not her real one. When I got home that evening, she was already there. She said she'd picked up something light for dinner. Fast food bag sat on the counter, the kind she grabbed when she was nervous and needed something to do with her hands. Her voice sounded careful. She asked how my day was. I answered with one word. Fine. Then I went upstairs and showered. Afterward, I found her in the living room scrolling Netflix, pretending to relax. But her leg bounced, her breath was uneven, and she kept glancing at the doorway like she wanted to start a conversation but didn't know how. The thing about space, the kind she'd asked for, is that it doesn't stay neutral. Someone always fills it. She expected I'd use it to wait for her, to hope, to cling. Instead, I used it to recover my center. and she could sense it. Later that night, she tried again. She mentioned that things felt strange between us. She said she hoped we weren't drifting too far. I listened without responding. That silence made her voice crack in a way no accusation ever could. She didn't realize it yet, but this wasn't me slipping away. This was me rising out of her reach. By the weekend, Emma's unease had turned into something sharper. I could feel it in the way she hovered near me without committing to a conversation, the way she washed my hands when I worked around the house, as if trying to remember what it felt like when those hands reached for her. She kept asking if I wanted to go somewhere, do something, get lunch, take a drive. I declined each time with the same steady tone. Not today. That tone rattled her more than any accusation would have. She didn't want space anymore. She wanted reassurance. And I wasn't offering what she'd already given away. Saturday afternoon, I headed out again, telling her I had errands. I drove the car nowhere in particular, letting the quiet streets settle my mind. I stopped by Home Depot, walked the aisles without buying a thing, just absorbing the steadiness of it all. Order, structure, tools meant for repair, not destruction. I stood there for a long minute, realizing I didn't want to repair anything in my own life that Emma had fractured. Some damage you don't fix. You step around it and build something new. When I pulled back into the neighborhood, her car was still in the driveway, but she was on the front porch, pacing. The moment she saw me, she straightened like she'd been caught in the middle of rehearsing a confession. She said she wanted to talk. I told her I needed a minute inside first. That pause made her swallow hard, like she knew whatever came next wouldn't be something she could control. Inside, I took my time, hung up my jacket, washed my hands, checked the notebook where I'd logged her comings and goings. Patterns don't lie, and her pattern had been indisputable for weeks. When I walked back outside, she was sitting on the porch steps, elbows on her knees, staring at the street like waiting for a lifeline. She said she felt like she was losing me. She said she didn't understand why I'd pulled away. She said we needed to reconnect. I listened, letting her spill every practiced line. What she didn't know was that her panic wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the version of me who stayed still while she drifted. When she finished, I told her calmly that space was exactly what she wanted. She said she hadn't meant it that way. She said she needed clarity, not distance. And hearing her scramble to redefine the very thing she'd asked for told me she finally sensed the truth. She hadn't expected me to fill that space with someone else. Someone who actually liked being touched. Someone who didn't leave me waiting nights on end while she laughed with another man in a gym hallway. Her face went still at that. Not shocked. Not angry. Something deeper. Recognition. The foundation she thought she controlled was shifting under her feet. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like the one being left behind. The shift between us became unmistakable the next morning. Emma woke before me, something she almost never did on Sundays. I heard her downstairs opening cabinets, closing them, moving through the kitchen with restless hands. When I finally walked in, she was standing by the counter with 2 coffees, one for her, one for me. She tried to hand me mine with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I thanked her, set it down untouched, and grabbed a glass of water instead. That small choice hit her harder than any argument could have. She'd built her mornings around that oversized Starbucks cup, using it like armor. Now, she couldn't even hide behind it. She asked if we could spend the day together. I said I had things to take care of. That was true. I had things to organize, plans to finish, emotional weight to strip down and haul out like debris from a job site. She stood there blinking, trying to understand a version of me where she wasn't the gravitational center. While she paced around the living room, pretending to clean, I stepped into the garage and opened my notebook. I looked over everything I'd tracked, times, patterns, breaks in routine. Not to confront her, not to prove anything, just to confirm that my detachment wasn't reactionary. It was earned. It was logical. It was the only clean way forward. When I came back inside, she was watching me with something close to fear. She said she felt me slipping away. She said she knew she'd pushed too far. She said we could fix it. I didn't interrupt. I didn't reassure her. I just let the silence sit between us until she couldn't hold eye contact anymore. Around noon, she stepped outside to take a call. I watched her through the front window as she paced the porch. Her shoulders stiffened when the person on the other end spoke. She said she couldn't talk right now. She said things were complicated. She said she needed space to think. The irony didn't escape me. Space had finally turned on her. When she came back in, she acted casual, asking if I wanted to watch something on Netflix, like revisiting an old habit might pull us back to the way things were. I told her I needed air and walked out before she could ask anything else. I didn't take the car. I just walked the neighborhood in long, steady strides, letting the clarity settle in deeper. By the time I returned, she was sitting on the couch with her hands clenched in her lap. She asked if I was seeing someone. Not accusing, not angry, just hollow. I didn't deny it. I didn't confirm it. I just told her the truth in the simplest way possible. I had filled the space she created. Her breath caught. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just stared like she finally understood the difference between losing someone and watching them walk out of reach forever. And for the first time, she wasn't the one holding the door. That night, the house felt different. Not louder, not colder, just honest in a way it hadn't been for months. Emma sat on the far end of the couch, elbows on her knees, staring at the floor like the truth might rearrange itself if she kept watching. I could feel her trying to hold on to something that had already slipped through her fingers. She asked if we could talk. I told her we could, but that talking wouldn't change where things were going. My voice stayed calm, steady, the same tone I used on a job when I had to explain that a structure couldn't be saved. She said she never meant for things to go this far. She said she didn't realize how lonely she'd become. She said Nate wasn't what I thought. I let her speak without interruption, not because I believed any of it, but because giving her space to talk was the last courtesy I had left. When she ran out of explanations, she went quiet, waiting for me to rescue her from the truth. I didn't. I told her the simplest version of what I felt. Trust doesn't shatter in one moment. It wears down in small, careless steps. The late nights, the secretive smiles, the messages she tilted away from me, the nights she washed him off her skin before speaking a single word to me. She didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She just closed her eyes like she'd been bracing for impact and finally took the hit. I stood up and walked to the hallway where my notebook sat on the shelf. I didn't need it anymore. Every pattern was complete, every answer recorded. I placed it back in the drawer and felt the weight lift off me. Not relief, resolution. The kind that comes when the work is finished and the tools can finally be put away. Later, I packed a small overnight bag. Not a dramatic exit, not a slammed door, just a clean step toward my own life. When I walked past the living room, she stood quickly, asking where I was going. I told her I had somewhere to be. She asked if this was goodbye. I didn't answer directly. I just told her the truth in the same quiet voice I'd carried through all of this, that she wasn't losing me tonight. She'd lost me the day she asked for space and filled it with someone else. I grabbed my keys and walked out to the car. The night air felt sharp and honest. As I pulled out of the driveway, I saw her silhouette in the window, motionless, finally understanding what real space felt like. Not a pause, not a break. Distance she couldn't close, no matter how fast she ran. I drove without music, letting the quiet settle around me like a fresh start. I wasn't angry. I wasn't heartbroken. I was free. Some people fight their way out. Some people scream. But men like me, we rebuild. And sometimes the only thing worth repairing is the life we walk into when we stop trying to fix the one someone else broke. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.